Greetings and welcome to another episode of Super Speak Sundays. I'm your host, James the Orator. Hey, this is a space where we highlight ordinary people who have gone on to do extraordinary things. We want to thank you all for your support thus far. The videos are rolling. The guests and subscribers on our YouTube, on Facebook. I do want to let you know that pretty soon, we're going to be transitioning from showing live Facebook videos, and we'll just show clips, and then you'll have to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And so if I were you to get a jump start, I would go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's very simple. Just open up one of our videos. At the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a red dot. Just hover over that with your mouse and hit the subscribe button. Just that simple. So make sure you do that. We all have gone through some difficult times, due to life circumstances. And sometimes we need support and we don't know where to go. Well, there are a number of people who we definitely recommend that you get the support from. Today, we have a gentleman who has been in the mental health field for some time. We are very, very excited about hosting him on Super Speak Sundays today. So let me, without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our guest. Yameen Chestnut serves people who have felt knocked around by life and may want support as they move forward. Let me start over. I'm tripping. Yameen Chestnut serves people who have felt knocked around by life and want support as they move toward fulfilling their true potential. A true believer in the field of positive psychology, Yameen believes in focusing on individual strengths and virtues to help individuals, couples, and families thrive. Yameen recognizes that his clients want to be heard. He has been told that his clients love his comforting approach to listening and feel his counseling style focuses on strength of individuals and each family member. He has discovered that families want a deeper understanding of individual uniqueness, which sets the stage for families to enhance their family system without judgment. Yameen brings a wealth of life experience and over 10 years of professional expertise with families and children. He is particularly interested in children who are in foster care and the child welfare system. Yameen aims to help remove barriers that are obstructing clients from reaching and blossoming into their ideal selves. Yameen earned his bachelor's degree in human development with an emphasis on child and adolescent development from Howard University in Washington, D.C. He later went on to earn his master's of science in marriage and family therapy from Capella University. He is a member of both the Indiana and American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. Yameen specializes in mood disorders, youth and adolescent work, couples, premarital and family counseling related to transition, adoption, and trauma. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our guest, our therapist, our mind regulator, Mr. Yameen Chestnut. Mr. Chestnut, how
Hey,
you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, James. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As I was reading your bio, it just made me. I saw Capella University, and that's one of the areas. Well, that's the place where I got my PhD, and so I'm
All
always
right.
excited. I'm always excited to see a
Yeah.
fellow Capella University graduate. Talk
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
about. Well, let me. Before we get started, we always start our shows with a quote. Once you see this quote, I'm going to read it, and then we're going to ask for your initial reaction to what we've read.
Okay.
So the quote says, whenever two people meet, there are really six people present. There is each person as they see themselves, each person as the other person sees them, and each person as they really are. And that's by William James. What are your
Okay.
thoughts regarding that quote?
Okay. Wow. Listen. One, I immediately I like it because it does speak to um, there's more going on within situations, within individuals, than what meets the eye. Um, I always talk about, and it's consistent with. There's a theory in therapy related to internal family systems,
Sure.
and essentially it states that we're made up of parts,
Okay.
right? That each of us, we have our sides to us, and depending on the situation, it may require, one part of us to take the lead, hopefully or ideally the right version of ourselves in that situation. People will talk about, their work identity versus,
Right.
their home identity. Um, and so I find it very much true. And that statement, I think, speaks to that, where there are multiple things that are happening, multiple things that
Yes.
are going on. And it's important to be cognizant of that. It's important to be aware of that as we're interacting and as we're being engaged with, that again, there's more than meets the eye.
Yes, yes. I can remember when I was young, early in my dating years, 15, 16. My father would tell me something. He would say, as you meet people, he said he said the representative is who you initially meet. And so when
Hmm.
we talk about relationships, we know that relationships are different now. I mean,
Yeah.
back when my parents got married, they've been married over 50 years now, but now relationships are different. Talk a bit about that representative who people send out when they first meet someone, and what does that mean as relationships kind of progress?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, it's this very familiar story, right? Where people will talk about, especially having been together for so many years, if things aren't going the way that they like or that they expect, you will hear that reference to, this is not the person that I first met, however many years ago. And so it very much is that thing where we have to be mindful of who we present as, um, and my thing is always make sure that that's sustainable, right?
Right.
Whoever you show up as, you know, th- again, hopefully or ideally, you're showing up as your genuine self, so that it's not work in that way. Of course, all relationships require some effort,
Sure.
but you don't want it to become a chore, right? And so if you're showing up in your most authentic self, and the space is made for you to be safe to be that version of yourself, to show that side of yourself, then that's ideal for sure.
Absolutely. I would think that it's very difficult now. You talked about authentic self. With the overhaul of social media and everybody having to be
Hmm.
and everybody having to do and be better than the other person. What does that do in terms of relationships when people are really struggling to be who they really are?
Yeah, listen, you hear the familiar themes around imposter syndrome, or, people are operating in such a way that's really not consistent with their morals, with their values, and they know it, right? And it's a burden for them, to continue to operate in that way, and so things come to a head, and so social media just kind of makes that even more possible, because people really have a hand in designing, who it is that others
Sure.
see. They can really control and manage that narrative. And so, yeah, with technology, with social media, it just makes it that much more possible to create and maintain, a particular persona.
Sure, sure. Now, when you think about the experience that you've had and you've been doing this well over 10 years, being a
Hmm.
family and marriage therapist, what are some of the trends you've been seeing? Are you seeing more people being divorced or more people starting to get married? I mean, what are you
Hmm.
seeing, and how is that going to impact our communities? Um, you know, either way.
Yeah. So, it's a unique position to be in, as a marriage and family therapist, as a person that works with with couples, that works with families, and you have this bird's eye view of what's happening within, again, within the families, within the community. um, I wish I could say that, there's overwhelmingly a trend in one direction or the other. What I can say is that, no matter the walk of life, no matter the income level, no matter, where you're from, um, everybody deals with some stuff at some point in time. There are struggles
Right.
that everyone faces. The idea that, when trouble comes, right? Not if trouble comes, but
Right.
when
Right.
trouble comes, it's important, that we act, in accordance with our values, and that
Sure.
we address the situation. But it reminds me of how, and with being in the position that I'm in and working with
Sure.
so many couples, it's humbling, because it's like, just when you think, that there is a group of people who don't deal with challenges or don't deal with struggles, you're quickly reminded, that no, everyone, if you're on this planet,
Right.
at some point in time, you're going to deal with something, and something's going to show up within the relationship, and oftentimes it's just us. We can be our biggest enemies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You talked about this perfect marriage. I think people who are not married
Mhm,
see a relationship as something that has to be perfect. I must be perfect. He must be perfect, and our
mhm,
relationship must be perfect. But as you mentioned,
mhm,
we all go through,
mhm,
ups and downs in marriage. It's just the ebbs and
mhm.
flow. I mean, we're bringing two imperfect people together and trying to make something perfect. Talk
Yeah.
about your desire to even want to enter into this field. Take us back to maybe your early years when you were in high school, maybe, and
Mhm.
what were some of the things you did to say, hey, this might be a career field that I may want to pursue?
Yeah, so that piece unfolded over time, where when I first graduated from Howard University. To be honest with you, my goal after my time at Howard was to get just a job, right?
Hmm.
Of course, I wanted it to be within my field, but it was just to get a job. And at that
Hmm.
time, coming out of college with a bachelor's degree
Right.
in my particular field, that human development and child and adolescent development and psychoeducational studies was the major. um, there were only a handful of things that you could do with that particular degree, and
Right.
much of it was community-based work, which I
Okay.
enjoyed, and which I had a passion for. So there was a fitting there. Um, but after so many years, I began to recognize that there was just a ceiling. There was just only so far that I could go
Right.
with that bachelor's degree. And so, especially during my time working in child welfare, especially during my time working at Department of Child Services,
Sure.
I was both. I was a family case manager. Then I went on to be a family case manager supervisor for
Hmm.
some years. And one of the things that dawned on me was that, especially in the work with all the families and the kids,
Hmm.
I just recognized that everything, to me at least, came back to mental health,
Sure.
and how much of a need there was, um, to have solid mental health in place. And so I knew that I wanted to do something in that field,
Sure.
to help move the needle. And I stumbled upon the program. Capella had a great program through the
Hmm.
Harold Abel School of Counseling, I believe it was, in Human
Uh-huh.
Services, um, and decided to pursue that advanced degree. But it really wasn't until later on, and I've spoken to this,
Hmm.
um, at in other venues. But it really wasn't until later on where it really kind of clicked, that there was just something about the field that I that I felt, was kind of designed for me, and why I was so comfortable in that setting.
Right.
And it was, I had reflected back on an experience, that I had in high school after my 10th grade year. Had And I grew up in Washington D.C., and
Sure.
anyone that is familiar with Washington D.C., and particularly in that time period that I was kind of coming up through the ages, was like the early 90s was
Right.
around the time. That late 80s, early 90s time in DC was very turbulent, for various reasons, with the drug trade,
Right.
and gang activity and shootings and violence and all these sort of things.
Hmm.
And so, unfortunately, that had crossed my path as a high schooler, and I dealt with, being a victim of some violence,
Hmm.
and um, my parents had taken afterwards myself and some of my friends and my brother, who were all involved in this situation,
Right.
up to see a counselor,
Okay.
who was right off of the campus of Howard University on Georgia Avenue.
Okay.
And anybody who's familiar with the author of the ISIS papers,
Hmm.
it was her. She was the psychiatrist.
Wow.
Um, and um, I remember I didn't know what my parents were having us do. They took us to this building. We walked in, we sat down. This woman came to the door. She warmly invited us into her office.
Okay.
We sat and we talked. Um,
Wow.
to this day, I can't remember exactly what was said, but
Right.
I do remember the feeling, right? I
Wow.
do remember how she helped us feel, normal.
Wow. Oh, I think we lost you. Okay, we're back.
And although it was only maybe one or two sessions, you know, it stuck with me.
Okay.
It stuck with me for years afterwards. And again, when I had begun to pursue the degree, it had dawned on me, like, wow, I had counseling before,
Hmm.
and this is how it made me feel, and I liked it, and I liked,
Right.
the idea of providing that for others, and so it really solidified my decision, to pursue the field of counseling, because I wanted to give what was given to me.
Sure, sure. As we look at society now, we know young people, I'm sorry for what happened to you, but we also know that this is happening on a regular basis now with our young people, particularly our young black men. What are you seeing in terms of the trauma that our young men are facing, and what this means as they move into relationships and things of that nature? So first, talk
Yeah,
about our young men, and then you know s- the dysfunction of what we're seeing in relationships and things of that nature.
yeah. So I mean, it's something that's been around for a long time. This idea um, that boys, shouldn't express certain emotions,
Sure.
right? That boys shouldn't cry. That they shouldn't be vulnerable, right? That they shouldn't basically have emotions. And again, I think it's something that's been around for a long time. it's
Wow.
it's this thing that sort of perpetuates, in our definition of what masculinity is, and
Right.
what being a man means, and how to show up, you know um you know in the community. And
I think we lost your
um
audio.
it feeds into that issue. And so, of course, anything that happens to us in that way is going to show up within our relationships.
Right.
And I think that's one of the problems, is one of the things that you're seeing is that, people are carrying these beliefs. They're carrying these unhealthy beliefs around, and then of course they show up in our relationships, which require all of us, right? Our relationships require every part of us,
That's
and
right.
it's this higher level functioning type thing. And anytime that things start to accelerate or pick up or require more of you,
Sure.
some of those deficiencies are going to show.
Absolutely. I know you have three young ladies that you're raising. And I'm sure it's very, very difficult because you want your daughters to select or be selected by someone who who you based on who you are, who you taught them to be.
Yeah.
What are the difficulties that you've seen with our young ladies in terms of being able to just engage with within healthy relationships?
Yeah, it's the other side of that formula where, they're being exposed to, individuals who may not be representing themselves in a sustainable way, in a
Right.
productive way, and then that idea becomes normalized, so to speak, or that becomes, even acceptable in certain situations.
Sure.
And of course, that's the work is in understanding all those. There are certain things that might be normal for certain people. That does not mean that it should be normalized, and that doesn't mean that should be accepted.
Sure. One of the things that you do prior to two people coming together, you provide pre marital counseling.
Hmm.
How does if someone is a part of a church or whatever, how does your therapy differ from what someone might get from a pastor?
Yeah, listen, so because I'm trained in that field, and have studied, it's really coming from a down to earth. It's coming um, from sort of an evidence based
Sure.
perspective. And of course, there's room for it all.
Right.
There's space for faith-based counseling. There's space for that sort of premarital counseling that one might receive in a church type setting.
Hmm.
But what we're providing, what I'm providing, is something that's been established and studied, and filtered through. But of course, I try to make it my own, and
That's right.
make it acceptable or palatable
Sure.
for folks. And so just me being me, and the way that I interact with people, it tends to go over well without coming across as talking over
Right.
people's heads and making things too complicated.
Wow. As you have done this counseling with folks who are thinking about getting married, because we want to help someone today or help couples today.
Hmm.
What has been the number one misconception, and whether this be a trend or not, what's been a misconception that people have come into your office to say, hey, well, this is what I thought it was going to be, or but
Hmm.
you end up having to correct that. Is there
Yeah.
any particular trend that you've seen in those areas?
I mean, there's probably many.
Okay.
I mean, I can come at it from different directions. One, I think one of the misconceptions is that the therapist is going to tell you what to do.
Hmm.
And I can't really speak for other therapists, per se. And I don't have that experience of hearing other therapists say otherwise. But in my office, I don't tell you what to do. I don't give advice.
Hmm.
What I try to do is get the client to see what it is that I see,
Right.
right? And not that I'm trying to convince them that what I see is the only way to see it, but I'm trying to have them understand what it is that I'm hearing from them,
Right.
And I try to turn that mirror around and say, you know, look, this is what I see. Is this correct? Is this what you're saying?
Sure.
Right? Um, and oftentimes that's, for a person to just understand and recognize how they're operating and moving, is enough for them
Yes.
to make a change. It doesn't take, again, I'm not twisting any arms. I'm
Right.
not telling them that they should be this way or that way. I'm just literally turning the mirror and saying, okay, based on what you've told me, this is
Hmm.
this is what I see. Does this work for you?
Right.
um, and they can make their decision from there. You know, of course, there are outliers. There are very few situations that present, but they do present where the writing's on the wall, and it's
Absolutely.
it's it's obvious to everyone that this situation that you're in is probably not working for you, and
Hmm.
often what they're looking for is somebody to tell them what they already know.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have on the tickler we have the link for your wellness group, your wellness
Mhm.
counseling group. Talk a little bit about the well counseling group and how all that came together.
Yeah, listen, I was fortunate, I was blessed to get the opportunity to be a part of that practice almost from its inception. The lead, the head of the practice, Elizabeth White, um, years ago after I graduated, and a matter of fact, I think it was slightly before I graduated, slightly
Okay.
before I actually walked. I had stumbled upon her. I can't even remember how it came to be, but had an opportunity to sit down with her and share with her what it was that I wanted to do, and we talked about whether that would be a good fit
Sure.
within her already established practice. And so it started out. It was just myself, Elizabeth, and I believe one or two other individuals. And since then, it's grown to, I think we have at least six or seven different providers. We've moved into a much larger office
Sure.
space. We're servicing a much larger span of clientele.
Sure.
And we've kind of uh, began to become the go-to practice, especially for folks in the African American community.
Sure.
We're particularly popular for that group. Not that we don't work with folks who are not African American, but we want to serve our community, and so we've created a space. We've created a comfortable space, I believe, for folks, especially those who have never done therapy, who
Sure.
are hesitant or unsure of whether therapy is for them. And we've shown a lot of people, and it's one of my favorite things is to have first time therapy folks leave the office after their first session, like, realizing like, yeah, this is for me. Like,
Right.
I don't know why I didn't do this before.
We know historically, people of color, particularly black folks, have had this stigma about engaging in therapy,
Hmm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so and so
understandable.
and so as I think about therapy, the first thing I might think about, and I'm saying this for our listeners too, is once I go and share my information, the therapist might go and talk about what I've told him or her.
Hmm.
Talk a little bit about that and how we dispel that myth,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I say it like, if you're familiar with that Vegas term, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
right,
What's discussed within those four walls stays there. In addition, we're essentially, what's the word? We're bound
right,
to certain rules.
HIPAA.
Um, yeah, HIPAA, correct.
There you go.
And what it does is it helps. One of the things I think that's great about it is that it ensures the client, it ensures the patient that what's talked about stays there. right?
Right.
And so yeah, we're bound to keep that there in the office. I mean, there are of course, some exceptions to that rule when it comes to safety,
Sure. Right.
and that sort of thing. But other than that, listen, people can come in and talk about just about everything. And in my years of doing the work, I've heard just about everything.
Right. Now you're located in Indianapolis, Indiana, but you also provide services. You can serve people throughout the country. Is that correct? Or are
Yeah,
you
that's
go ahead?
correct. I'm doing virtual as well, so we're not just providing in-person counseling, but also virtually. And so I do have some clients that are out of state that we work with in a virtual way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important. I mean, we don't see a lot of black men who are therapists, or at least they may be there, but their platform is just not highlighted, and that's one of the reasons
Yeah.
why we wanted to bring you on. We know that men and women are hurting out here, and so to
Hmm.
have someone that they can connect with the wellness counseling group, I think is something that's very special. Final thoughts. You have someone who's thinking about getting married. They've come from a traumatic experience. They want love, but
Yeah.
they can't seem to get this thing right. Relationships have been up and down. I've been in and out of relationships. I can't find the right
Hmm.
match. What do you tell, whether men man or woman, what do you tell them in terms of building a foundation for sustainability in a relationship?
So, again, I don't know what many other, especially marriage and family therapists, how they would sort of lay it out. But I would believe I'm one of the few that you will hear a marriage and family therapist say that marriage, as it's an institution, all institutions aren't made for everyone, and that may come across to some as startling, but just as, and that's okay that it's not made for. So for the example I'll provide is just as there are people who graduate from high school
Right,
and college, or university is an institution. Maybe college isn't their next step. Maybe
right.
it isn't quite right for them at that particular time. And that's okay. That does not mean that they can't go on to make a good living,
Hmm.
to be a productive member of society. It just means that, it's just not for them, or at
Right,
least at that particular time. And I put marriage under that umbrella, similar to that, where it's not that it ultimately can't be a goal, but you have to come into it understanding all that it takes, right? All that it's going to require, and it's best that you show up, right? With an informed standpoint. It's best that you show up with your best self, and
right,
at least have certain things taken care of, certain things addressed, before you jump into that arena,
right,
right? And so, for folks that are considering, taking that next step or jumping the broom, that's great, but really, be open to the idea of slowing things down and figuring out, okay, what is this next step going to require of me?
right.
I have this sort of decision making tree that I call the bar exam, and it's this set of questions. It's like a decision making process. And one of the first questions is, how aware am I of what's expected of me in this given situation?
Oh, wow.
And that's
Wow.
really an orientation question, right? For you to be aware of what's going to be required of you, right? It would behoove of you to know the fine print. It would behoove of you to know, what's in that quote unquote contract before you
Right,
sign your name on it. And everyone should do that in whatever situation. I don't care whether it's buying a car, a home, or or getting into a relationship with someone. You should
right.
know what the requirements are, what they're going to ask of you, so
Wow.
that you can know, is this something that I can respond to, right?
Absolutely.
And so similarly, in entering to, or deciding to, or considering, um, getting into a marriage, or picking up a relationship and making it serious,
Right.
there should be that time spent exploring, what's going to be required of me, and do I have what it takes right now to meet the demand? And if not, what will it take?
Right.
How can I build those skills so that I can, if that's my goal, so that I can ultimately do this, and then do this in the right way.
Wow. Man, I think that part right there, that part right there was serious because
Yeah.
people don't take the time to evaluate themselves or what they're getting into. And I like how
Yeah.
you made the bridge between if you're gonna make a decision about a car. I mean, you're gonna check the tires and check things out,
Right.
but also
Right.
making sure that this, if you're buying the car to take you across country, you have to know what
Hmm.
you're buying. If you
Yeah.
want it to be a local car, then you got to know what you're buying.
Absolutely.
Oh man,
Absolutely.
great. That's great. That's great. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been hearing from licensed marriage and family therapist Yameen Chestnut at the Well Counseling Group. Please reach out to him. He's a thorough brother. I've been around him for some time, and I know that his heart is in the right place and wanting to help families, young people, and all those other components that he serves to make our country well. Mr. Chestnut, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for
No, I
taking the
appreciate it.
time, to spend with us here today on Super Speak Sundays. It's been a
Yeah.
true pleasure. The information that you provided, I know will make a difference in someone's life. We're probably going to bring you back to find out how many people who have contacted you because again, people are
Yeah.
hurting and people need the help.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. Absolutely. I appreciate it, James. I appreciate being a part of this.
Absolutely. Until next time, we will see you, and we'll talk with you soon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from a therapist. Wow. When I think about what he said, it makes me reflect on my own marriage. I got married in 1998. I think I was 28 years old. And my wife and I, we've learned a whole lot about one another over this time period. But I can tell you one thing, we've learned how to grow, we've learned how to identify each other's shortcomings and keep the wheels on the bus. They got to keep going round and round. If you're thinking about getting married, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to Mr. Chestnut. He is he's ready to talk with you. We have to heal ourselves and be open to accepting direction from others who have been trained in areas. So I appreciate you all listening today. I hope that you have taken something away. Once again, this is your man, James the Orator, here on Super Speak Sundays. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube page. Again, the bottom right corner of every video, you can subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Peace.